Hello, here we are again. This time with some more Unity programming. Continuation of what I started 2 weeks ago, making kind of a game like Mad TV in Unity. I'm a relatively beginner when it comes to programming, so it's more of a stream of thought and teaching myself to make something like this, while at the same time teaching at least some of the concepts and what I believe is a good approach to making something like a 2D game using a 3D engine like Unity, and having a good segregation of the different responsibilities, clearly separating the data, the logic, the graphical part, the user interface, so that we can easily modify things later and add some new stuff like localization, different controllers, and stuff like that. Before I jump in, I'm going to bring up the original an image of the original Mad TV, because I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with Mad TV, and to understand where I'm heading with the game, it's probably good to know at least what we are going for. So this is an image of the original Mad TV game. It's a very old game on PC and Amiga as well, I believe. As you can see, very simple graphics, and the game has two clearly different parts. The upper part of the screen you can see the building, and the game is about three TV channels who all have their offices in the same building, and there's the red, the green, and the blue. And as a player, you can control one of these three channels, and the other two will be controlled by the AI. So in the upper part, you can see the green character moving around on one of the floors, the 7th floor apparently. And in the middle of each floor, you can see the elevator. Elevator is the only way to go from one floor to another. So you immediately can see about movement is relatively simple. Characters can just walk left and right on one of the floors. They can interact with the elevator to move to a different floor, and they can enter one of the doors to move to a specific room. And then the graphic will change of the upper part, and you will see the room where they are, where they can interact with, for instance, the schedule that they're broadcasting on their channel. If they move into the office, there's the news studio, the office of the boss, and there's also neutral rooms in the game, such as the one where you can acquire programs or adverts. So relatively simple. The bottom half of the game view there is where you can see the television and the inverted television. The inverted television is the opposite, where you as a broadcaster can actually see your audience. Would be cool if Twitch would have something like that, don't you think? By the way, who is watching at the moment? I'm guessing just Maisie. I'm only seeing Maisie in the viewer list. Yeah, my loyal follower Maisie. How are you, by the way, Maisie? Been a while since we last spoke. Well, really spoke, besides saying hi and hey, that's my eagle. So the bottom half of the screen, we have the television where you can switch between the three channels. You can then see the number of spectators, and I believe that's in millions next to that couch. You can also see the cash flow and the time of day. And at the right you see the inverted television, where you can see not just how many people are watching, but also which audience groups you are reaching, such as kids and elders, men, women. Of course, the original Mad TV in this sense was very simple. There has been a few reinventions and Mad TV clones coming out. Some of them in recent years, and I tried some of them. They sometimes added a lot more complexity to the game, which wasn't always for the good, because one of the strong points of Mad TV was exactly its simplicity, and more than that, its sense of humor. So will I update the user interface? I'm thinking the graphics will be somewhat in the same style, at least at first, because I really am not a graphical artist. So I think if I get something that looks somewhat like the original Mad TV, I'd be very happy. In terms of complexity, well, I'm gonna start with less complexity. with less complexity than what we have in Mad TV, but with the intention of making it moddable enough so I can easily add more stuff later. What I do want to do is to allow the possibility to play multiplayer. So one player can play red and then someone else can play green over network. That would be an improvement that I see working, and that wouldn't be, I believe, wouldn't be too hard to implement. So yeah, this is more or less the game. You program programs for your channel, you add adverts, and those adverts will generate revenue as long as you meet the requirements, which is mostly a certain number of viewers, but there may be more specifics, like you need to, the advert requires, for instance, that you broadcast a sci-fi program, or you may need to reach a certain target audience, such as children or women, stuff like that. Things that are in the original Mad TV that are probably not due in the first round. For instance, in Mad TV you can also make your own movies. That's something I will not do at first. Original Mad TV you also had television programs before every program. News is not something I'm going to implement straight away. So yeah, it will be more limited at first, with the intention, of course, to add it later, but there's so much to do that I want to limit the scope at first to keep a clear view of what I need to do and where I'm heading, and at least get the basics to work before I add a lot of extra stuff and complexity. Right, so this is the idea, this is where we're heading. Now let's take a look at a small spreadsheet that I made with how should I say it, the way I intend to build the game, which different classes and objects we will have. And you can see I've split things in layers. So if we look at the model in the middle, the model is actually all the game logic. We'll have classes for the game, the building, the rooms, players, channels, characters, and stuff like that. And all this in the model will be independent of any platform, or whether you use a controller or a mouse and a keyboard, and how the graphics look. All of that will be independent. So our model will have no knowledge whatsoever of how things are implemented graphically and in terms of controllers, whether you're using a touchscreen or mouse and keyboard controller, whatever, or even virtual reality, um, who knows. So that's the game model. Then we have the controllers, which are actually the objects which will have most of the code and that will control what is happening in the game. And I'm thinking, this may change of course, but for the moment I'm thinking to have a broad game controller which would handle stuff like loading the game, saving game, creating a new game, maybe also the time controls like pausing the game or fast forward. Then we have the character controllers, and whenever a player moves around the building and interacts with the objects, they will doing it through their character. So I'm thinking the character controller will handle any player input and transmit that to the underlying model through the character. And then we have the audience controller, because as you can see I have here viewers in my model. That's the way I tend to simulate, because the game evolves a lot about the economics and how you gain viewers. For every channel will have viewers, and the game needs to simulate that, how many viewers you get for your program, and that's the main, the core of the game, because how many viewers you get determines whether you can meet the requirements for an advert and whether you make profit or loss. And what I think of doing is to have a viewer class in our model, and the game will generate maybe 1000 viewers with randomized stats, so different genders, ages, and preferences. Some of them might like sci-fi, others might like Western. So our game will generate, say, 1000 viewers with random stats, and then we'll have the AI here in blue. We'll have some sort of viewer AI, which will determine for each individual viewer which channel they are watching, whether they're watching television to begin with, and if they watch television, which channel. And then we'll have our audience controller, who will just regularly check all the viewer objects and see which channel are you watching, and thus gather statistics for each channel, how many viewers there are. That's the way I intend to simulate that part of the game. So viewer objects, randomized statistics, a viewer AI that will determine for each viewer which channel they watch, and then the audience controller that will kind of poll each viewer, I guess, to say, hey, which channel are you watching, and then will feed back information to the game saying, okay, you channel 1, or green channel, you now have 250,000 viewers, and channel 2, the blue one, you have 350,000 viewers, something like that. So yeah, those are the main controllers. The character controller can get input from the user through a controller, a mouse, keyboard, touchpad, whatever the input method here in the UI will communicate with the character AI, which will be a general class. No matter what the input is, it will have some sort of interface to let the input classes tell him or her no, not the character AI, the character controller, of course. So all these input classes will have a way to tell the character controller, hey, player 1 wants to move to this location. Player 1 changed the destination for his character to this location. Things like that. And then the character control will communicate with the model to apply the changes. Of course, if we have AI players, then we also need a AI for characters, which will actually do a bit the same. It will interact with the character controller. It will determine a logical action for each character and then communicate to the character controller, just as the input controllers would do for a player character. And then we will have, if we are using multiplayer, we will also have some sort of network controller, which will transfer input from a player over the network to the character AI. And in that case, we'll have one host who hosts the game, and then we'll have other players with a client version of the game. And the host will just have the input transmitted to the character AI and will simulate the whole game model, and then probably through the network controller returns the state of the entire game to the client, who then needs to apply their own graphics. So the client can render the graphics based on the game state communicated from the host. That's how I have it in mind. Besides the controller input, we also have, of course, our user interface with the playback buttons, play, pause, fast forward, and our game menu to load and save the game. So that will interact with the game controller who can change the game speed, who can load or save games, and interact with the game object in our data model. We will have the regular input here from the controllers through the character controller or the network or the AI for AI or network players. And we'll have this simulation of the audience. We also have data. Data I mean is actually files containing data that we'll use in the game. And we'll have an advert list and a program list. So this is the files containing all the programs that exist in the game and that a player could broadcast on their channel if they acquire it. So this will be like sort of a small XML file or something like that containing all the programs and adverts. And that should be easy moddable. If we want to add more programs or more adverts, we can easily add them in these files. Or we can even have something like localization where we have different translations, quite possibly as well. Yeah, that would also go here in the data class. And then finally we have our graphics, and this is probably one of the last things I'll implement. So we will have graphics, sprites for the menus and buttons, although we currently use the standard user interface elements present already in Unity, such as buttons. We will have playback buttons for play, pause. We will have sprites for the building and the different rooms, sprites for the characters as well, and then sprites for our television, our inverted television, and for the stats part in the middle. And the way I think of doing this is we will have the building, and how does one move around the building? Well, we've just saw that characters can only move horizontally on the floor they're at, and they can interact with doors and objects and the elevator. So when we talk about the movement, the input of the character through mouse and keyboard or touchscreen, it will just be moving left and right or interacting with something. I think that should be pretty simple, in fact. So I'm thinking we will have the building. Maybe we should move back to the view here. So I'm thinking we will have one graphic for this building, and when the character moves, the camera will stay always centered on the middle. But when the character moves up and down the floors, the camera will follow the player. So this upper half of the screen the camera will never move left and right. It will just move up and down, and it will just follow the player. So if the player or the character graphic moves, then the camera just follows it. So that's very simple to program. the bottom part of the screen will be fixed because this doesn't change. The only thing that changes is the image of what is shown on the television and on the inverted television and the numbers in these boxes, which can all be acquired from the game model. The game model will have or the data files, because we will have a data file with all the programs. The game model will say, okay, green channel is broadcasting Superman, and then the data files will have Superman and then a name of the sprite that actually has the image for Superman, and then the game will just take that image and put it in this box. Seems relatively simple as well. So that part will be fixed. The upper part will move vertically if the character uses the elevator. And then the only thing left is what happens when a player enters one of the doors. Then they would get a different view on the top half. The bottom half will still be visible. So yeah, that will still be visible. But the upper half would then show the room the player's in. But they cannot move in the room. The room is just a fixed view where you see, for instance, the desk of the manager with the computer on top. And what I'm thinking of doing is in Unity to just have the different rooms in the same plane, but well, somewhat to the right, for instance, of the building. And the only thing we'd need to do is just when a character enters the room, the camera would just move on top of the room image that's in the same plane. I'm not even sure if they're actually moving in the original Matt TV Mazy, but you've got a point. We need to consider that. Well, here the moving image might not be so difficult, because I'm guessing we can just use a GIF, and you can have an animated GIF. For the audience, yeah. Well, something to think about still. But that's definitely further down the road. We're not as far yet as to actually start working on graphical implementation, for sure. So yeah, you can imagine that to the right here, outside of the view, there is actually the manager room of the green channel. And as soon as you enter the door, the camera would just switch immediately, teleport like to this position, and then the building would be to the left, but again outside of the view. So it doesn't really matter. We don't need different scenes and all that. We can just put all the rooms in the same plane as the building. As long as our camera is zoomed in enough that you don't see the rest, it doesn't matter really, does it? And the game will never pause when you enter a room. The channel will just the time will keep running, and the television here will keep running, no matter what you have in the upper part of the view. So that's the way I think of doing it, more or less. Yeah, I've been thinking quite a lot about this model, but I think that's an important part, because if you start programming before thinking about all this, then it's a lot more work to make modifications later. And to have a good idea at start is probably very important to not lose a lot of time doing double work. So that was our model. And I just realized I haven't even launched Unity yet. How long have I been broadcasting and I still haven't launched Unity? So let's bring up Unity, shall we? And there we have it, Unity. So what did we have? We had the user interface. with our game menu at the top. That will be fixed. Perhaps I might lay it out to the left here instead of the top. No, not yet. I haven't really thought much about. At first, I'm really concentrating on making something very similar to MatTV, but even less functionality, and then go from there. But yeah, thematic change might be something to do. On the other hand, I have never really had the intention to release this game afterwards, or certainly not commercially. It's more of a tryout for myself to actually make a game that is fully functional. And I think MatTV is a fun thing to do and something that I can realistically make. But we'll see where it goes, Maisie. I honestly can't say yet. Because what would this game have that the original MatTV didn't have? Or some of the later clones or reimaginings? Thinking we would just be having too much of the same, so there would be really no big selling points for this game. So yeah, I'm not thinking about that just yet. I'm just going to make something like MatTV to start with, and we'll see later how it evolves. So going back to our game, we had the UI with the game menu and the different buttons: new game, load game, save game. We have our controllers, and I have to check now if that's still in line with what we intended. We have our game controller. So what we need as well is a character controller, right? So we're gonna need a character controller, a game controller, and an audience controller. I see I already also had graphics and sound controllers, and I'm not sure. Yeah, that's probably okay. Because these will just be polling the game for its state and then render the graphics and the sounds. And a mouse controller is actually one of the input controllers, but we do need a character controller, and the mouse controller will just provide its input to the character controller then. And what we had here as well is adverts, advert blocks, the building, channel, character, programs and program blocks, rooms and schedules. One class I'm already missing here is the viewer, because we definitely want the viewers and the audience simulation. And going forward, I think that might be one of the first thing I'll do, that is the simulation of the audience. And something I could do is like make a simple menu here, like 3 drop-down boxes. So we'll make a data file with a number of programs with just a name, no description or anything, just a name, and maybe a genre. And we'll have 3 drop-down boxes, one for the blue channel, one for the red channel, and one for the green channel. Should be relatively easy to implement. And then at the bottom, we will create our fixed television and our inverted television. And instead of showing an image of the program being broadcasted, it would just show the name of the program. And we could already get some feedback from the audience, how many viewers we have, and we can program, of course we need to program the audience controller, the viewer object, and the let's go back to our model here. So yeah, the viewer object, we then create about 1,000 of these viewers. We would have a viewer AI that controls them. Yeah, the viewer AI which just checks for each viewer which program they're watching, and then we have the audience controller that can give feedback to the game about how many people are watching each channel. And here our statistics sprite and the television, inverted television, we would implement those. And in our statistics window, we would show the number of viewers of each channel. Something like that. And then we can play around with how the audience actually responds to different programs being broadcasted by the 3 channels, without actually working on the whole game, without having actually characters and a building yet. Just 3 channels, each with a different program they're broadcasting that we select in a drop-down menu, and then the game would simulate how the audience, which would be fully implemented already, responds to that and provide us statistics for each channel, how many viewers there are. I think that's probably going to be the first thing I'll be implementing, because it's the bottom section of the view is like a closed part of it already. We have some game logic, we have some AI, we have some graphics, so I think it's a good start without making it too complex. Of course, a lot depends how many statistics each viewer will have. Will we just give them a genre preference, say sci-fi, or will we give them a certain value for how much they like every possible genre? And say they have a sci-fi affinity of 70 and a Western affinity of 25, something like from 0 to 100. And based on that, they will choose if the blue channel is broadcasting sci-fi and the green channel is broadcasting Western, then the probability of them tuning into the blue channel will be much higher, something like that. I think it's going to be a lot of statistics based, because we don't want it to be predictable and we don't want the player to be able to calculate how many viewers they're going to get. I want to really have a simulation there, starting from individual viewers and then create like 1,000 of them, random ones, and then work with probabilities based on their age and gender and the time of day, to determine which channel they would be watching. And I was thinking as well about types of viewers, and I'm thinking of 3 different types. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna go with that. The first type will be the TV addicts or something like that. And TV addicts are people who just almost always watch television, and they might be tuning into their favorite channel most often. They might change to a different channel from time to time, and they may tune into the channel broadcasting what they like most. But if none of them is broadcasting anything they really like, they probably continue watching anyway. So they're mostly always watching television, but what they're watching depends on one side by their channel loyalty, and on the other side by which channel is broadcasting the thing they like most. The second group will be the regular watchers. So those are people who will regularly tune into their television. They will have less channel loyalty, so they will be more inclined to go through the different channels to see which channel is broadcasting the thing they like most. And the difference here is that these people, when they don't find something with at least a minimum level of interest, then they will just turn down their television. So they'll tune in, they'll check for the program they like most, and then tune into that. And if none of the programs being broadcasted meets a certain minimum requirement, then they will just turn down the television. And then we have the third group, which are very specialized viewers, and they're very picky. They will very rarely tune into television to begin with, but when they do, it's mostly not just at random, it's because they know that a program they like is being broadcasted. So they will just tune into programs that have a high match with their preferences, and if there is no such program on the schedule, then they just don't watch television. Yeah, more casual viewers, exactly. But those are people who like check a magazine to see what's on television the coming week, and they will highlight one or two programs in their interest, and then they will probably tune in. But they rarely turn on their television just to turn it on, and will mostly tune in for specific programs. Middle group, they turn on their television, they will check what's on it, and as long as there is something that they like enough, then they will watch it. But otherwise they may still turn down their television. And the first group, the real addicts, they will practically watch television always, no matter if they like the programs being broadcasted, though they will still tune in probably to the program they like most, or well, they might have a certain loyalty to a given channel. So that's a bit the three categories I have in mind. But even within those, there will still be statistics. It's never gonna be fixed. So even if a player prefers sci-fi to Western, that doesn't necessarily mean that they will always tune into sci-fi. They might occasionally watch a Western anyway. Maybe because they already saw that sci-fi movie, or because it's a sci-fi movie they don't particularly like, or anything along those lines. And even a TV addict might not be watching television every single day, because maybe they have some other real-life obligations on a given day and they're not watching. Sports event, yeah. I believe, I'm not sure if it was Mad TV, or if it was one of the later redevelopings, but I believe there were sports events in some of these games. Sorry. So yeah, bidding for exclusives, that's a fair point, Maisie. But again, that's already looking further ahead. Not really the model, but already dreaming of what we could add. A very cool idea. Definitely agree with that. So, back to our juggling with Windows here. So we just said we would have viewers. Let's just open up the MonoDevelop. For our viewer class. Now, viewer class will not be derived from MonoBehavior, so we'll not have a start and update function. But I'm thinking we will have a a static const type. No, not types, just type. Yeah, of course we need to... We'll make it an integer. And type is not allowed. Viewer type. Why is it complaining? I really need to brush up on my C# skills here. It's underlined red and I don't know why. There's no way. Oh, the modifier static is not valid for this item. Okay. Well, static is normally a... we cannot have static and const at the same time, is that it? Maybe it shouldn't be a const to begin with, maybe just static. Yeah. Because it's not a constant, it can change. But a static is a which belongs to the type rather than to a specific object. Is that what we want? No, that's not what we want. So let's just have a viewer type then. I'm not sure why I came up with constant and static. I was probably thinking of making an enum and then I could make it static, because the enum would be the same. Or we can just use integers 1, 2, 3, I guess. Viewer types. One is addicts. Maybe we should do it this way. One addict tunes into television almost every day, has high amounts, usually has high amount of channel loyalty, doesn't require minimum, how do we call that, liking, doesn't require minimum affinity with program being broadcasted. 2 would be a regular, regularly tunes into television, has a moderate amount of channel loyalty, requires checks channels for program with highest affinity, might turn off television if no program with might turn off television if no program with minimum affinity is being broadcasted. And then we have 3, a occasional, not sure if that is the best term for this type, casual, yeah, casual is more regular maybe. Yeah, of course we're talking about terminology here. Only tunes in occasionally for specific programs with a high affinity will usually not watch television otherwise. Right. I think that's more or less the description we wanted. So we'll also have an integer gender, zero is male and 1 is female. Oh. Then we'll have an H, and then the affinity with different genres. One thing we could do is say, okay, int sci-fi affinity, int Western affinity, int this list could get pretty long, of course. It would be the most detailed, which is probably what we want, because we do want the audience simulation to be relatively complex and probability based, to make it hard for the player at least to easily predict how the audience will act, because that breaks the game. As soon as you can predict the audience too easily, there should be some logic, of course, involved. If you are broadcasting the better program and you have the most loyal viewers, you're broadcasting the most popular program, then you should probably get more viewers, but there should be enough randomness and unpredictability, or the game would be broken. So I'm thinking I'm gonna stick with this ID for the moment. So age would be, maybe we should split them up a little. We have viewer types, age between 2 and 102. Because I think that's the easiest to generate. And then we have the affinities. From 0 to 100. Zero totally hates the genre. 100 is fanboy. Western affinity. Documentary affinity, etc., etc. So yeah, this is my first idea of how to make the viewer class. The only downside here is that for every genre that we add to the game, we would have we would need a parameter for the viewer class. But the alternative is just to have a preferred genre, for instance, but that's far less detailed than to have an affinity for every genre individually. I think I'm gonna stick with this at first, and we'll see how it evolves later. Right, let's just public viewer. So we're gonna add a constructor, so this code will run when a new viewer is created, and for the time being we will just randomize stuff. So temporary constructor to create randomized viewer objects. So how are we gonna start? The viewer type. Are we gonna have 33% chance for each one of them? Yeah, maybe. Why not? How does a random function work again? Random class for generating random data, yeah. Returns a random integer between the min and the max. Okay, so that would be 1 and... Oh, but this works with floats. Right, so we're going from 1 to 3. So viewer type equal to, and then we need to get this to become an integer. Now I have to think again, how do we do this? To cast. Yeah. I'm thinking I'm gonna have to make some preparations for the next stream and actually do some looking up for specific codes, because this is somewhat elementary to randomize and to cast a float as an integer and stuff like that, because we're gonna need it on a regular basis. Integer. No. I have an integer class, int. Mat. Yeah. Float to integer. The largest integer smaller or equal to random range 1 3. Yeah, I think this will do the trick. So we are picking a random integer. No, we should pick 4. Because we're taking the floor. So this will generate a floating number between 1 and 4. Then we'll convert that to an integer using the floor, which could be 1, 2, or 3. And add that as a viewer type. The only issue I have here is, will random range include both 1 and 4 then? Because then we could theoretically end up with 4 as well. Very unlikely, but it would be possible. I'm just trying to find the simplest way to implement this line. We could always say if it's 4 then make it 3, but that's kind of a dumb way to do this. Use random range instead. Okay. Now this picks a random number. I want the documentation here. Yeah, this is not what I wanted to do. Yeah, I'm guessing I'm gonna have to redo the coding when I have the API open and be able to do some research while we're going. Right, we're not gonna be implementing any checks right away anyway, so but the idea is there, so we will have a constructor running that will generate a random viewer type. Addict, a regular and occasional viewer, will generate a gender, probably 50-50 as well, I guess, male and female, an age from 2 to 102, and then an affinity for each of the genres from 0 to 100, where 0 is they totally hate that genre and 100 they're fanboys. And so this constructor will run for every viewer we create. Let's just save it for the moment and go back to our Unity. Or better even, let's go back to our model here. So these viewer objects, we'll create like 1,000 of them, for instance, and then randomized stats. So some will like sci-fi, others will like Western, some will be old, some will be young. We will have males and females in there. And then we will need to start implementing some sort of AI that runs. How often should it run? Definitely not every frame. How often do you expect the viewers would change? I'm thinking in the original Mad TV game that was something that changed like every minute or so. Well, not every minute in game time. Yeah, that's again also a distinction we have to make, in-game time or the real time. Maybe every 20 seconds or so, assuming we're running at normal speed. Every 20 seconds we run the viewer AI. Yeah, I'm thinking that like 1 hour in-game time would take maybe 1 minute in real life, something like that, or half a minute. We'll fine-tune that. We'll have some values that we can easily tweak to find a good balance. The viewer AI would then run like, let's say every 20 seconds. So every 20 seconds, although that would mean it's only 2 or 3 times every in-game hour, that's not enough. Maybe every 3 seconds. 3 seconds, and that would mean if 1 minute is 1 hour in the game and we do it every 3 seconds, that would mean that 20 times during that 1 minute when the program is broadcasted, 20 times the game would refresh all the viewers and check, hey, are you still watching? Or better, what are you watching right now? And I'm guessing that at the start of the program, the probability is likely that viewers will change based on their preferences and based on their channel loyalty as well. Whereas near the end of the program, chances are that they're no longer going to change and switch to something different. But some of them still might do that. That's important because basically the adverts, you want to you have an advert planned and it has a minimum requirement, and part of the tension of the game is that while the program is running you have the minimum required number of viewers, and then closely before the advert runs suddenly the viewers drop and you go below the minimum, that adds a little bit of tension, and that's part of it, I think. Are you going to take the risk if your viewers is really near the minimum requirement? Are you going to take the risk to keep the advert scheduled? And maybe just before the advert runs, your viewers will drop and you will not make it? Or you change your advert and then afterwards realize that it wasn't really necessary? That adds some tension and gameplay, so let's just do that for the moment. I do notice as well, while we're at it, that I seem to have forgotten a dot comma somewhere. Yeah, of course. The option to have an advert-free channel. Yes, however, it would require some thinking about the game strategy, because that's mostly how the game works at the moment. The adverts are your main source of income. A public channel, they would have a fixed income. So how would that work in gameplay? If you have a fixed income, it doesn't really matter what you broadcast, I guess. So back to our idea, the viewer AI will run, let's say, every 3 seconds. Every 3 seconds the viewer AI would, for each viewer, would check again which channel they're watching. Near the start of the program, chances are they'll switch. Near the end of the program, this chance becomes a lot smaller. They will check their channel loyalty and their genre affinities, and that will simulate again which channel they're watching. And then our audience controller will run and poll every viewer to see which channel they're watching and return some statistics to the game model. I think concept-wise we're doing okay here. I think that would work. We also need to think performance. The more objects we generate, of course, the more the impact on performance. On the other hand, our viewers over here are not actually mono-developed classes. They're just C# scripts, so they're not very taxing on the game, I believe. I think we can easily do with 1000 or more. The viewer AI, on the other hand, the thing is also, do we have a viewer AI per viewer, or do we have a viewer AI that goes through all the viewers, loops through all the viewers and updates their data? I guess I'll have to think about this a bit further, but this will be the first thing we'll implement, because this is a thing that I have a clear vision already how I'm going to run this simulation, and we can easily make some visual implementation to at least get some feedback, not how it will work in the final game, but to get some feedback to see how the simulation runs. And yeah, that will be the first thing we'll be doing, but I think that's going to be for the next episode. I do intend to do it on a weekly basis, and probably every Sunday, and I'll be updating the schedule of the channel to indicate that, because I think Sunday is a good moment to do that for me personally as well. So every Sunday evening I will continue with this. This gives me 1 week of time to think ahead, do some lookups on certain code in the API, and then we'll broadcast. It will probably stay a relatively short stream. I'm already not that experienced, and I'm really not intending to do a stream of 3 or 4 hours of coding. We'll probably stay a short stream of about 1 hour, 1 hour and a half every Sunday evening. Well, thanks for watching, folks, and I'll be back in about 15 minutes and with some Shadowrun Hong Kong. Yeah, the turn-based game. I already played Shadowrun Returns, Shadowrun Dragonfall, and I will start with a playthrough of Shadowrun Hong Kong. Pretty good game, the other Shadowrun, so I'm really looking forward to playing Hong Kong and discover it together with you folks. So those of you who are checking out, thanks for watching, have a good weekend, and see you next time. And for those of you who are going to watch Shadowrun Hong Kong, I'll be back in about 10 to 15 minutes. Thanks for watching, folks. See you around.